Welcome to Beaver Politics. It's Wednesday, so you're here with myself, the Progressive Moose, on the Mossy Side with the Moose. Great to see you guys. Don't forget, tapping is clapping. Share the live, guys. Let people know we're here having these conversations. Just a few quick points before we get going, guys. We have new shows, new hosts going on throughout the week. We're happy to bring Happy into the fold. And he will be doing, I believe, Sunday show now. So we will have a full 7 week, 7 day a week lineup for you guys, which is fantastic. And we do have two shows, I believe, on Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays at this point, if I'm not mistaken. So we've got a massive lineup for you guys. Keep that in mind. All week long, we're here with different topics and bringing you the best facts and information we can. With that being said, guys, we can't do it without you guys. We really appreciate all your love. If you feel compelled, of course, we do have our live goals that we have up here at the top. So if you do like the information we bring to you and you want to support our cause in trying to bring people together and bring the facts to you, by all means, we welcome it, but we will never, never, never try and pressure you to do so. Miss Radical on it right away. Look at that. Again, two guys, we do have the little heart there. You can hit that little heart, become a part of the team, and the option to subscribe as well is there. If you want to join us over on Discord and be a part of the conversation there, go to our profile and it's in our link tree, guys. You can click it there, join us over on Discord, join us on YouTube, where we post all the live over there within the next day. So if you do happen to miss a show and you want to check it out, you can go find it over on YouTube. Yeah, so that's the rundown for now, guys. Let's start off with the Ontario debate. This is something, so technically there's two at this point. I started doing this one when it was the Northern Ontario debate that they did. So a lot of the key points that you're going to hear is from that one, but as well, a lot of the stuff from their platforms is going to affect everyone. So there's key points from both the Northern debate and the, I guess, full on provincial debate. A lot of their points were the same, getting into things. So, starting off with Merritt Stiles for the NDP and how she did, I think she did okay. She stuck to the core principles of the NDP. Sorry, just looking at my notes here, guys. So, she pointed out that the Liberals had cut funding to municipalities before the Conservatives actually got their majority. Um, when it came to different things like infrastructure and whatnot, we've seen that throughout the Conservative time with the majority that they have as well. Doug Ford continued that and exacerbated that. So at this point, a lot of things that the province used to be um, responsible for and in charge of, they aren't at this point because they didn't want to be responsible and put the funding into it. So they kind of dumped it down to the municipal levels. And that's where we're seeing across Ontario right now, where municipalities have been raising taxes all over Ontario because they've got all this extra stuff that they are responsible for being dumped on them from the province, and they have to figure out ways to fund it and take care of it. So that's why you're seeing so much in terms of municipal taxes going up. A lot of people talk about Toronto. That's the biggest one in the conversation, right? Because it's the metropolis that it is, and they're increasing as much as they are, as quick as they are. Um, so, good point by Merritt Stiles in that sense. She goes on to say that they have a plan to take a lot of those responsibilities back to the province and highlights mental health supports and aspects of healthcare that have kind of been put onto the municipalities, which I think is fantastic because it means that there'll be more funding and the province will actually take responsibility for that. Right now, guys, in Ontario, well, across Canada, On average, 7% of all healthcare funding goes to mental health supports and the mental health aspect of things. So if the province can actually take that back, maybe we can make a little more headway when it comes to the mental health aspect of things, at least in Ontario, um, which can be coupled with substance addiction, and other things that go along with it. So that's always good to hear. She also promises a monthly grocery rebate. I believe it's like $140 a month, which would be great. It'd be better than nothing. um, she points out the Timmins rent is up over 31%, North Bay is up over 36, and Thunder Bay 40%. Goes on to say that Ford keeps talking about the economics potential of Ontario. Where is it? Which is true. He keeps talking about unleashing the economic powerhouse that Ontario is, but he's been saying that since he got elected, and we still haven't seen it. So where is it, Doug? So she makes a really good point on that one. Um, my apologies, getting a little dry. So when asked if the NDP would take back the responsibilities of affordable housing, she said yes, and that the NDP plan for the Homes Ontario plan would build 1.5 million affordable housing units in 10 years, which 60,000 of would be allocated towards supportive housing to help deal with the homeless crisis, which is those are big numbers, guys. Those are definitely big numbers. And if they were to get into power and get those numbers done, that would be massive. It would be fantastic. It would do so much good. Um, yeah, and on forestry and minerals, so that's more geared towards Northern Ontario. Um, but on those sectors, looking to diversify provincially and globally, so open up trade to be able to take better advantage of what we have in Ontario up here in the north for resources. Um, and guys, pretty much all of the candidates except for Doug Ford kind of made pledges to say like, hey, given everything we're facing right now, let's harvest Ontario, let's produce Ontario, and let's build Ontario is essentially what the Green Party, the Liberals, and the NDP are all saying in terms of ways to combat tariffs and the trade situation with the United States, as well as, again, opening up kind of provincial borders um, to be able to help strengthen our provincial economy and keep Canadian products in Canada, which is always a plus, right? Liberal. So Bonnie Crombie is the runner for the Liberals. She pointed out that under the Conservatives, more things were bumped down to municipal levels of government, costing taxpayers more as municipal governments incur that cost. As I had already brought up earlier, guys, that's exactly what's going on. That's why you're seeing taxes go up on the municipal levels more so. And that's one thing Doug Ford always keeps saying. He hasn't raised taxes. He hasn't raised taxes. It's an scapegoat because he put so much down to the municipalities that he didn't have to raise taxes. That's why all of them are, and not the province, right? So context, credit where credit's due, and call a spade a spade. He's definitely watching his words and making sure he's strategic in how he says that stuff, because technically he's not lying. He hasn't raised taxes, but there's a reason for that. Um, so she says she will cut middle income taxes. So I want to make a key point here, because it's if you make under $75,000, I believe. But the problem with this one is if you make less than, I believe, $50,000, you don't benefit from it. Okay, so it's solely for that bracket, which sure it helps some people, but if you're going to help the people between 50,000 and 75,000 or 100,000. I could be uh, wrong on the top of that, but either way, if you're going to help people at that level, why aren't you helping the people below because they need it more than the ones making 50 plus a year?
I think I don't
Uh,
want to interrupt, but it was 75. You're right. You're right.
okay. No, perfect. Thank you. So I was right on that. Awesome. She also says that they are looking to double ODSP, which again would be a fantastic thing. Right now, they did use an example, and I've seen other critics and economists use different amounts, but essentially in Ontario, it's like you max out at 1,300 a month on ODSP, and look at the cost of living. I mean, even in rural Northern Ontario, like I am, good luck finding a place that's a decent space and you can actually live in for less than 14, $1,500 a month, and that's getting the bare minimum. You look at places like Toronto where you're lucky to find something at 2,000 a month. So how are people on disability supposed to be able to afford to live when they can't even afford to pay their rent off their monthly um, allocation, right? So definitely a good thing. That's got to be Doug Ford tried to kind of protect himself and deflect on that one, saying they did raise with inflation, but guys, it definitely wasn't enough. They're still struggling. Um, anyway, so Crombie also says they will take the HST off of the home heating and hydro. So that's another avenue which will save Canadians. I wouldn't say it'd be much altogether, but I mean, it does add up, right? So credit where credit's due there. Pointed out she wants to protect northern jobs in both forestry and mining. Again, same as the NDP, so kind of across the board with that one. Points out that Ford government is the highest, has the highest deficit, debt, and largest government in Ontario history. And she's not wrong about that. All those things, they have the highest deficit, the highest debt, and the largest government in Ontario history. So for the Conservatives to keep talking about, they want to be fiscally responsible and they want to make sure, they tighten the bootstraps and really, really watch them dimes and dollars. They're really doing the complete opposite of that when you actually get into the numbers. So keep that in mind as well, guys. Um, Points out, Bonnie Crombie also points out that youth unemployment rate is at 17.1%, and unemployment overall is the worst that it's been in Ontario in over a decade. So unemployment is definitely through the roof, and a part of that stuff, guys, is because all of the corporations are relying on foreign temporary workers because they're saying they can't find local workers, which is a lie. There's plenty of people looking for work, but they get kickbacks, and essentially, it's a cash cow for the conservative provincial government as well. Because you need to remember, people that come and work temporarily in Canada pay all the same taxes that we do, but they don't get any of the benefits. They don't get the health care. They don't get the pension or the um, workers comp and all that sort of stuff. Like they pay into that stuff, but they don't benefit from all of it. So it's a way that the province has used to bring in more revenue without having to pay anything out because they're temporary workers. They're going to leave at some point. So what does it matter, right? That's the way things are set up. And that's how you see how Doug Ford has really benefited corporations and corporate interests more so than working for the people and taking care of things for the people. Um, and throughout both the debates, all you hear him talk about is business and the economy, right? Economy, economy, economy. You got to have a strong economy. You got to have a strong economy. But to have a strong economy, whether we're talking about jobs, whether we're talking about infrastructure, whether we're talking about healthcare, whether we're talking about education, all this sort of stuff. If you take care of your people, you will do better overall. It's like running a business, right? Conservatives keep saying that running a government is like running a business. The better you take care of your workers in a business, the better your workers are going to do in terms of production because they're happier and they want to be there, right? So, as the government, if you take care of us, the people, like education, like healthcare, like the things that we actually need, instead of trying to pour money into fantasy tunnels under the 401 and bypasses and all this other nonsense that we really don't need at this point. What we need is things for the people. Excuse me. Yes, there's certain things that need to be done. Construction needs to be done. You need to expand highways as population density gets higher. But at the rate that it's going, especially with the tunnel, I will definitely keep that one forefront in my mind because the tunnel is if it were to actually go ahead, it would be hundreds of billions of dollars, if not more. It would be considered the biggest, largest tunnel in the world. And he says that the highways in Ontario are going to be at max capacity in southern Ontario within 10 years, but then says the tunnel's the best option. But the tunnel's going to take 40 years. So how is that going to help us, Dougie, in 10 years when we're at max like you say we're going to be? Sorry, bit of a rant on that one, guys, but that's um, anyway. Back to Bonnie. Pointed out that Ontario is losing jobs in manufacturing and skilled trades to other provinces because Ford has not given incentives like other provinces have to the skilled trade workers to be able to secure them. And a lot of cases, it's for home building, right? Carpentry, bricklaying, all that sort of stuff, because all the other provinces are looking to build. And that's one of the issues we're facing in Ontario is the housing crisis, where Doug Ford hasn't even met his own targets, let alone what kind of the rest of the country has been doing on a provincial level. We're definitely lagging behind on the new home builds and especially affordable housing. Purpose-built affordable housing is what we need the most right now. Um, yeah, so Bonnie Crombie's got some strong has some strong stuff, guys, but I want to point out that she did not say that she would take certain things back, like housing. She didn't say they would take the housing back on the provincial level. Pretty much said that they would cut the red tape and take care of different fees for developers, stuff like that. So essentially, do everything um, up to, but not including taking back affordable housing on the provincial level and leaving it with the municipalities. But essentially, her platform on that one is you take care of developers, which in turn business interests, and she's not getting down to the nitty gritty of actually taking care of the system itself and doing it for the people. There's still the capitalist aspect to it within the liberal platform on housing. Um, and Doug Ford, let's get into some of the stuff he's gone through and talked about. Um, so, started off on the first debate, bolstering his plan to build road to the Ring of Fire to open up critical mineral sector here in Northern Ontario. Yeah, guys, I don't think that's really going to take off too much. There are different mines and everything that have been opening up more so here in Northern Ontario. There's a newer gold mine, a couple new nickel mines going on. Um, so I mean, we're already seeing the expansion of the critical minerals expanding, even without his road to the Ring of Fire. So Doug can say it as much as he wants. We don't need his fucking road up here. Apologize for my language. Um, but Doug also pointed out he was the only one on stage who hadn't raised taxes. Of course he did. And like we've already been through, I mean, yeah, he didn't raise taxes, but again, that's because he put it on the backs of municipalities when it came to a lot of responsibilities instead of just dealing with it themselves on the provincial level, right? Um, he was met with pushback from all of the other candidates, uh, pointing out that it's because of lack of funding, and putting the burden on the municipalities that has gotten the province into a lot of the issues that we're facing right now, with different infrastructure and mental health side of healthcare. Um, all that sort of stuff. Infrastructure is a big one too, because even within this small northern community I'm in, there's definitely different issues we're having with infrastructure, and the town is trying to take care of, but has to raise taxes to be able to fund that stuff. Um, so it'll be interesting moving forward. A lot of this stuff, every party except for Doug Ford said they'd be willing to take a lot of stuff back on the provincial level and have plans set out, in all honesty. But Doug just can't move away from, corporate interests, business interests. And that's a lot of what he talks about. When he talks about tax cuts and stuff like that, guys, he says the quiet part out loud, where he says he wants to cut corporate taxes. He wants to make sure that companies get incentives and get funding to be able to bolster themselves for the economy. And he's a lot like Trump in that sense, right? Trump will sit there and bolster the stock market. Look at the stock market. Look, the stock market does not determine how your people are doing. It's determining how businesses are doing, not the people, right? And it's the same thing with the economy. The economy is going to do good when business is doing good. It doesn't mean that the people within that economy are doing good, right? So that's a massive tell right there, guys. Like that's one of the biggest things that I point out is the economy is separate from the people. They're two separate entities that you need to look at and keep separate in your mind. Okay. Um, yeah. So when asked if Doug would take back the responsibility of affordable social housing, he deflected towards others raising taxes and did not answer the questions. Used cutting red tape a lot without detail. And also says they have cut the what? They have cut the purpose-built rental housing on new builds, which benefits companies and corporations more than anyone else. And again, guys, cutting the red tape is all about cutting costs for developers, not for the consumers. Just because the developers don't pay as much doesn't mean that they're going to turn around and sell it for less. It just means they're going to profit more. Look at the way our system is set up and look at corporate greed right now, right? It's not going to help us, the people, get a home any better. All it's going to do is help businesses, again, enrich themselves even more and let the wealthy become wealthier.
And sorry, I'm just going to interject a small bit right there. Is that is
Yeah.
exactly what's going to happen with the carbon tax? Exactly there. Those rich companies that had to pay the carbon tax because they were producing emissions and made everybody's products higher will not pass along the savings to the end user. They'll just pocket that money that they don't have to pay anymore. The carbon tax, it works the same way. You get a guy, let's take Kevin O'Leary, and he owns a big business that's all of a sudden he had to put carbon tax on it, right?
Yeah.
And he owned this factory, and whatever it produced, it went down the line. And because he got the carbon tax, it got down the line to each person, consumer, until it was into the truck that was driving the product somewhere. So it was always going up. But now when they cut the carbon tax, someone like Kevin O'Leary is not going to be like, okay, guys, all the way down the line, we get to save that money now. No way. He is going to take that as a savings himself and never pass it on to the end user.
Yeah, no,
That's
exactly, and that's what we see in corporate greed these days, right?
right.
Our capitalist system isn't actually a capitalist system at this point. It's what I call late stage capitalism, which is corporatism, which is the pretty much catalyst for what the sort of stuff we're seeing down in the United States right now. So, uh, yeah, we're essentially headed for another Gilded Age on more of a global level, and pretty much all countries are going to be seeing it at this point. given the way things are going.
And this is what,
Um,
back to Doug Ford, how to tie that in is that every benefit is always to his rich buddies, his capital, his buddies that are always, millionaires. He gives the breaks to them and he tries to pass it off to the rest of the
yeah,
province that it's going to some way manifest in a cheaper way to us. It's going to make a difference in our pockets, but it doesn't. That's the thing. People don't realize, I don't think, really how powerful and how connected, and the his connections that he works with are, you know I mean, look what he did with the green belt. That was all trying to sell that off to people that you
and
know
that was one thing. So I'm going to point that out. So during the last debate that they did, he full on like, listen, I was going to do it. And then I said I wasn't going to, and I went and did it anyway. That was his exact wording, right? So he full on said to the camera in the debate, like, hey, I lied to you, I apologize, but I fucking did it anyway. And it's like, how do people not see this? He said the quiet part out loud during the debate. Like, hands down, there is like, yeah, don't re-elect him when he's willing to say the quiet part out loud and nobody cares.
I know they didn't. They kind of laughed about it on the debate
Yeah,
the other night. They kind of was like, "Okay, well, 15 seconds. I'm going to ask you whether you would ever develop on the green belt." And then they got to him. All the other three were like, "No, no, no." And then he couldn't even, he had to say that, and they just kind of laughed because they knew why they were asking it, because they wanted him to say that part out loud. But people just scoff on by it. They're just like, you know what? They just go on by, and every other business out there, you know, has to be their word. So I don't know why he doesn't have to be his word at that.
yeah. No, absolutely. So just moving forward now too, because we still have Mike Schreiner to get to in the Green Party.
Yes.
So, um, honestly, guys, when I sat back and watched both these debates and just how they spoke, how they interacted with each other, I will fully say, in my opinion, Mike Schreiner from the Green Party won the debates hands down, flat out, like solely based on platform, based on his decorum, like everything about Mike is that's what we need in our politicians. Um, Now, in saying that, yes, the Green Party, I believe at this point, have 2 or 3 seats in the Ontario legislature. So I don't see it being a massive landslide for them, unfortunately, given where they sit in terms of support right now. But I mean, just putting it out there, if you guys are looking for an outlier and hoping to kind of branch out and have a different vote, it in Ontario, Green Party might be the option for that. Um, yeah. So getting into what Mike had to say throughout the night, he pointed out that Ford promised tax cuts and never actually had it happen. Uh, Mike wants to lower taxes for individuals making $65,000 or less, and families under 100,000 a year, putting $1,700 back in your pocket. He says housing starts are the lowest in Canada right now in Ontario. So that was a key point that he made, and he's not wrong about that. Ontario's lagging behind every other province at this point. First time home buyers. So, how he's going to try and do stuff, guys, some platform stuff. First time home buyer plan to save you up to 150,000 on a new home. Renter protections will be put back into place under the Greens. Um, NDP as well had mentioned doing so. And I believe Bonnie Crombie for the Liberals mentioned it as well, but not as much as the NDP or Green Party for the renter protections. Um, but Mike went on to say that he will build nonprofit affordable housing, make sure that gets taken care of. And when asked if the Green Party would take back social housing on the provincial level, he says, first and foremost, yes. Um, it's factored already into their hypothetical budget if they were to get elected, um, and would take it back from municipalities. Altogether, municipalities spent 2.1 billion last year on housing and homelessness. Very little of that came from the provincial government. He also added that the majority of all housing being built in Ontario under the Conservatives is private for profit housing. And he's not wrong about that. And that's the biggest issue is guys like back during the 50s, more so the 60s, going into the 70s, when you started to see where government got out of building housing and homes and it shifted to more of the private sector being in real estate than doing the actual purpose built housing that the government used to do. And he also pointed out at one point that the last time there was any sufficient or any major movement in terms of social housing or affordable housing in Ontario was roughly like the mid 90s was the last time there was like a massive build for housing, again, affordable and social that actually made a difference for people that needed it, right? There's wait lists across Ontario right now for social housing and affordable housing that people are waiting a couple years, if not longer, because the lists are so long and there's so little actually available. Um, so it's definitely a big thing that we need to get focused on and get a lot more done. Um, sorry. Schreiner also adding, someone working for minimum wage cannot afford a roof over their heads, and a minimum 88,000 are homeless in Ontario. 93% um, of the Ontario affordable housing was built before 1995. So back to my earlier point where it's been since the mid 90s since there's been actual purpose built housing done in Ontario. And it really shows because, yeah, 88,000 people on the streets, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. Furthermore, Doug Ford has been pushing to essentially make it illegal to be homeless in Ontario, talking about clearing encampments, giving the mayors the rights to clear encampments and throw homeless people in jail for trespassing, which how can they trespass? That's all they have. That's their home, right? We've seen pushes in other provinces where they are pushing to say, like, listen, if somebody is in a tent, if somebody's living in an encampment and they live in a tent, even though it's a piece of fabric, it's still a roof and it's still a wall, right? It's still considered their home. And they should have the right and same rights as anyone else because that is considered their home because they don't have one. So keep that in mind, guys. Like this whole nonsense of Ford saying he's trying to help everybody and he's trying to take care of, the most vulnerable and all that sort of stuff. He's actively doing things to make things worse for the people in the worst positions in our province. So sorry, I get a little heated when I talk about this stuff. Um, yeah, so that was a lot of him. When asked about forestry sector, he pointed out that 137,000 people work in the forestry sector and how three key plants, and I will say my community was actually affected by this, guys. So three key plants in Northern Ontario, Espanola, Terrence Bay, and Thessalon, closing their doors uh, shows how dire our forestry sector is at this point and how much we need to be focusing on it. He also brings up throughout the debates talking about start using let's see here, biomass from the forestry sector to move forward with a greener source of energy, source of heat, because essentially the biomass is just the scraps left after whether you're making lumber, whether whatever you're doing with the wood, everything that's left behind. So the bark, the sawdust, the chips, the all that sort of stuff that doesn't get used, start using that to create thermal energy and, of course, for heating in different ways. So that's an option that we have, that he wants to look into, kind of so we can move our forestry sector forward, and still be able to have it be strong and be a part of the solution. Right? We can repurpose stuff, in a lot of ways. It's a matter of having the ability and having the ingenuity to figure out how to go about doing it. Right? We shouldn't have to waste more resources when we've got plenty of waste that can be used, to be able to bolster our energy sector and help save the planet at the same time. Right? Like, just kind of makes sense to me. Um, a couple other quick key points, guys. Um, Mike makes a lot of good points. He brings a lot to the table in terms of information. Northern Ontario is at a much higher rate of overdose when it comes to substance abuse. Timmins is at an all-time high, 200% over what they've seen in the past. Sudbury is 185% increase. The North has been asking for more homelessness and addiction supports with little to no answer. Mike also pointed out how much the province would save if we were to house those who struggle with addictions and substance abuse. 30,000 a month in a hospital, 10,000 in a jail cell, and 4,000 in social housing. So it's actually cheaper to house them than it is any other option, but yet somehow we still allow them to go through and, end up in the hospital system because there are no resources to help them, or they stick them in jail because to, certain lawmakers or judges, they're a menace to society. Um, so, yes, Miss Radical, I am. I apologize. I've been kind of focusing on the information without doing so. So yeah, so that's everything on the Ontario provincial election. Damien, did you want to chime in on some of this stuff? And then we'll go back to Strong Woman if you would like to chime in as well.
Can we go with strong woman first? So I want to hear a little bit more of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Strong Woman, what do you have to say at this point in
Oh
the
my God. Well,
conversation?
first of all, I agree with you 1,000,000%. I thought that Mike from the Green Party was amazing. I thought he was amazing. And you're absolutely right. You were spot on. Like, we, again, who knows what could happen with more time, even in a month. He may pick up, even if he went to 10 seats or something like that, you know?
Hmm.
Just speaks very level headed. I want people to remember that, you know, instead of going with the same old, you have to remember that both Bonnie and Merritt have to undo a lot of crap that Doug Ford has done that's not good for this province. So they're already at a very big deficit. Like you could imagine, getting hired as the CEO or the president of some company where somebody has just destroyed it, right? Employee morale is low, and it's not fully functioning, and there's all kinds of like things that are not making the business profitable, and you have to come in and turn it around. And basically that's what one of those ladies each has to do. I mean, it's a very difficult job because they both have to go, whoever, if they were, getting lucky to get the vote, that
Hmm.
they've got a lot of undoing to do, and it's hard. Like, they're not starting from ground zero and trying to build it up. They've got to go back and dismantle these things that he's put into place. That was the first thing
Yep.
I wanted to say about that. So keep that in mind when you're voting. If you think, oh well, he's doing whatever. One of the things I wanted to talk about, because again, I'm not just K to 12 information, and they talked about this, um, education. They talked about this on the second debate, was post secondary. Now, a
Hmm.
day or two before the debate, Doug Ford was at his podium and he was saying, "Oh, these kids, they got to get off their bum. They got to get off, and they got to get out there working, man. Like, there's jobs and they're not working." But I want, like, he said says statements like that, and he's trying to be, I think, relatable, where we're all maybe sitting around going, oh, yeah, gee, we got all these jobs in Ontario. But let me paint a picture for you that what's possibly or could be really happening. Kids who go to post secondary school in the last, even if you want to put your kids in a sport, you want to have them in an art, growing
Yeah.
up, that costs you money. I mean, wages, jobs are harder. So people aren't saving like in the 80s and 90s for a college education. And we do
Yeah.
rely on OSAP. And you saw on that debate where Ontario is supplementing colleges and universities, even for these kids who want to go and get a trade. What they're saying is, they're going and spending their money. They're not even getting the support because he's clawed it back. It used to be before that even if you relied on OSAP, you got the OSAP to cover the complete tuition. Okay? Don't
Yeah.
judge. That's the way it is for a lot of people. If you want them to get a degree or a certificate, or you want them to get some trade or skill post secondary, then they want to go to school. But where's the incentive when a kid has to say, I still got to come up with $5,000. I got to work here. I got to do my homework. I got to do this. And when I come out, what Doug Ford's saying in that moment when he's saying, get up off your asses, those are minimum wage jobs. And you have a student who has spent tons of money, has to pay it back, is living with their parents, not making it out on their own, not feeling
Yeah.
independent. And they don't want to take a minimum job because they said, I went to college or university to do better. And I mean, I don't
Yeah.
even want to get into the doctors. Like, what payoff is it? He's telling people we can't have immigrant doctors. We're going to limit that. But then people are like, I don't know, there's no, it's just terrible. But I just, that struck me because he gets at that podium and he wants to be relatable. Oh my God, we got all these jobs. And it's like, it's not as simple as that. And
You
I
know,
really was so happy in the debate when they both said that, Bonnie and Merritt, that they said, you got to bring that back up, like post
Hmm.
secondary. There has to be, there's a risk and a reward. You have to have a reward of going to university, putting in that time, having the completion. And it doesn't have to be a doctor. I don't want anyone to misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
even if it's a skilled trade, there has to be a promise of a job. If you know what we're doing, I don't want to come out and spend that time learning and spend my money to say that I should be happy to take a job at Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
That's that's not
No.
going to cut my bills. That's not
Uh,
going to pay back my OSAP.
absolutely. Damien, did you want to chime in at this point?
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying there's much we can do about this, but I think the problem is less that about the immigrant doctor thing or whatever. Um, One reason we have so few doctors in Canada, like family doctors, is because there's a lot more money to be made in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some nursing training out here in BC, and it was sort of like an open. It was openly acknowledged that a lot of people would just be going to the States or other places.
Right.
I don't want to say they can't do that, but it's sort of like we are sort of providing a service of education in some ways rather than it really benefiting us.
Well, and yeah, and there's multiple branches of different topics of conversation too, like, especially when it comes to say post-secondary school education, where as much as Doug Ford deflects, he's been advocating for more international students because, again, it's a way to bolster the economy because you have them paying their tuitions, and the Ontario government doesn't have to subsidize or do the, like you said, the OSAP and whatnot. So Ontario doesn't have to pay anything, and that's why the province is always kind of bolstered to have more international students, um, and
I
that's
mean,
and that's where
yeah, yeah. I mean, they kind of subsidize their education too because international students pay like three, four, five times more than domestic students do.
yeah, no, and that's what I mean, right? So that brings in the extra money, and that's what Doug
Yep.
Ford wants. He wants the income, but he doesn't want to do anything to be able to get the end results, like people in the positions we need in healthcare, education, trades, all that sort of stuff, right? So
Yep.
And quite frankly, you have a guy at the top there when it comes to nurses, like he just treats them like crap. The whole we had to they had to get their money back from that bill. C, was it 133,
Yep.
that because he wanted to clamp down. And I mean, those nurses, they do 12-hour shifts, right? It's
Yep.
7 to 7 to 7. And I mean, he's cutting it less and less. And I don't know if you heard when I said before that the cost of this election would have hired 4,000, like 379 nurses. And I mean, that
Yep.
would give them, that's why they're going to the States, because
Yeah.
they're getting their training here, but they're saying I'm going elsewhere. And like in Ontario, it's like that's hard work. And
You know what's it's also that the nursing exam they take after school. It's called NCLEX, and that one applies to Canada and America. So any nurse who's working in Canada is already certified to start working in the U.S. And there's special
Yep.
visas under, I get whatever the trade deal we have with the U.S. They can go over there really easy. It's really easy for them to get visas. So Doug Ford's not, he's playing with fire here because like at the end of the day, you have to be able to. We live in a society where you need some resources to live.
Yep.
You need some money, and
Um,
they're just going to go where that is. They're going to go where that is.
No, absolutely. Just quickly before I kind of put my point in on that, guys, I'm a bit late here. I normally try to do it halfway through the show, but don't forget to keep tapping that like button. Tapping is clapping, sharing the stream, guys, sharing is caring. And as well, again, don't forget, we've got our live goals going on right here. So if you do feel compelled, thank you guys so much for all the gifts you have been giving. Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it. So keep that hype train going, guys. Get those numbers up. Keep going. We're at 22.2 likes. Let's see if we can get up to 30 by the end of the show. So that's about 11 minutes, guys. Get tapping that like button, and let's get up to 30,000 likes by the end of the show. Love it. Yeah, so in terms of healthcare, the biggest thing that stands out to me, and I will go right back to beginning of pandemic days, so to speak, in Ontario, and what we saw in our long-term care facilities. Um, for people that do realize and can remember, our armed forces actually came in and helped in long term care facilities because the for profit setup, they were understaffed, underfunded by the companies that own them, and could not take care of their residents properly, right? Doug Ford was all over it and promised that he would scrap the private system, make sure that sort of stuff doesn't happen again. It showed the flaws within the private sector of that industry, quote unquote. I know it's not an industry, but that's how they look at it. And he was going to do away with the private sector when it came to long term care. He never actually did it. When it came to bolstering, wait times and getting people to surgeries that they really needed to get to, been waiting for a long time. His solution, and he's still doing it, is by diverting people to private practices, which the Ontario government is paying more than they would the public sector healthcare for doing the exact same procedures. So we're hemorrhaging money for healthcare in that sense because it's all going to the private sector. And this is how he's slowly been moving things towards more private healthcare as opposed to the public sector. And that's really what we're seeing across the board. Look at Alberta, it's the exact same process that they're doing, just with different tweaks and going different avenues, right? Like this is the whole setup where, yeah, a lot of people, even Americans right now, are saying our healthcare is garbage. Yeah, well, it's because it's being dismantled from the inside out at this point. Um, so we got to keep that in mind, and that's something that I always point out is make sure you're looking at how things are going, especially when it comes to healthcare. Education, guys, look at where we are right now. I know even here in our small community, right? There's so many students that don't have EAs that should have EAs. They don't have the resources they need to be able to help the students the best that they can because of underfunding, right? Um, it's everything across the board. And, we're losing out on all this funding. We're losing out on all these resources across all our public sectors. Meanwhile, again, Doug Ford is making plans and making decisions and doing things to help his corporate buddies. Look at Ontario Place and what they're doing there. Look at putting the Service Ontarios into Staples. They gave Staples how many millions of dollars to retrofit their stores to have those spaces for Service Ontario under the taxpayer dollars, right? Like we don't benefit from that. Only Staples did.
And Staples is owned by one of his buddies,
Yeah, absolutely,
or
right?
is
Or
at
the
the top of
Greenbelt
it.
scandal, right?
Yeah,
When it
yeah.
came to developers, um,
Doug Ford is
that
the
sort of
corrupted.
stuff.
Doug Ford is the corrupted politician they keep talking about. He is,
Yeah,
but for some reason
absolutely.
they see right past it. I don't get it.
Yeah. The missus, you want to chime in? You just came up.
Hi, thank you for having me up. I have a question because I'm I'm not from Ontario, and all of the things you're talking about here with Doug Ford, I made a comment that least we forget, right? Just like the horrors. I worked in long-term care, end of life. The horrors that were coming out of Ontario, the green belt thing, the highway. There's so many things. But the real reason that Doug Ford got in on a majority is nobody showed up to vote. And is there some kind of big movement? Because will all of these things just fall to the wayside again because of the apathy amongst people to get out there? He won on 16% of the actual voting population in Ontario, correct? Do you see that as a repeat going to happen again, or what's
I,
what's the
I,
panel's opinion on this?
I definitely feel just quickly, I feel that we are going to be looking at a closer race. When you go into, like, if you go to smartvoting.ca, you can actually go into the different ridings within Ontario and see what the numbers are. So for my own riding, where I'd be voting in, we're currently sitting where the Conservatives are at 38%, and the following would be the NDP at 36%. So it's a closer race here, but you start to see that across the different districts where there are small margins. It's just a matter of making up that gap, and the left really has been. The messaging is out there. The word is getting out there. The commercials from both Liberals, NDP, and Green as well are out there telling people like, hey, this is the track record that we've seen under the Conservatives. They're why we are where we are. So it's time to get them out of there and let's do things different.
And let's not forget about Beaver politics out there
Yeah.
pumping the message, right? The
Woo!
everyday Canadians have suddenly woken up. They talk about the whole the irony of the woke phenomenon. They have driven people to it. They have driven people to it with their
Yeah.
negative messaging. And so I'm really glad to hear this message
I
because
I I
yeah.
think I've been out canvassing for the Liberal candidate in my town. So we've been really encouraging people to either vote early or checking where, if there's citizens like in it. We've gone to some condos and said, do you know where to vote, because it's older people, and they have set up the voting right in their buildings and making it easier for them. But of course, the snowstorm we just had, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen next Thursday, so definitely do early voting, vote early. But i think I think people will turn out. I think that message has come out that we don't want them to win with only a small percentage of turnout. So I think
Excellent.
more people are going to turn out. I hope they are. Maybe that's just blind faith. But I think with the smart voting, they were genius to come up with that. And I think that people are really catching on. Like, I made a post and I put two examples, and I have over 6,000 views just on that.
Hey, do you know
People,
who
people are
created
making
it?
comments.
Do you know who created the website?
Yeah, it's JB, is it not?
Yeah, you're the TikToker.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes,
Yeah.
he created it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And so it's a
Well done.
it's a real helpful tool. The other day after the election, I saw where Doug Ford is only 10 seats away. If he loses 10 more seats, he will not have a majority.
Oh, I'm so glad I stopped in here tonight. I needed a good dose of,
Yep.
of
Yes, so
encouragement
it
for
is
politics.
it is working. The people are finding their voice, and I don't think, even though the things he was banking on, that it was cold weather, that it was short term, that we would just let it ride. But after what we've gone through federally, what we're seeing in the United States, I think people are like, no, we need to be responsible for our vote, and our vote does matter, because a no vote is a vote, right? That's
Yes.
what happened for Doug Ford. A no vote is a vote. So if you sit home and say it doesn't matter, that is a vote for him, because you didn't give your vote to somebody else, and it's a vote for him. So
Absolutely.
Yes.
I
Thank you
think
for this.
I think
I'm
it's
going
working in
to
our
drop
favor.
back out of the. Sorry, I'm just going to drop back out of the box and listen while I continue to do my chores, my supper routine here. But this was so great to listen to, and thank you, Mossy Moose, the progressive moose, and strong woman. You got a follow out of me for your conversation, and Damien, I'll give you that as well if we're not already following.
Yeah,
Alrighty,
Mrs.
so.
Just quickly before you go, since tomorrow's Thursday, do you want to do a quick plug for your show tomorrow?
Yes, a shameless plug, and here it comes. Thursday, every Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's me, the missus, right in the middle here. I'm a Beaver, and I have the navigation station. And my theme for the Beaver Politics show that I put on is about presenting education and resources and solutions, and to help people navigate through our political landscape. So please join us. My guest is going to be Christy. She's got quite a few followers. Oh, Miss Treaty Six is here. Hello. Now I don't want to go. Now I don't want to go.
Actually, I was going to ask you if you want to hear my opinion on Ontario's election.
Yes. Yes. Anyway, goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So I'm from BC, and I've lived here my
Yep.
whole life. So I got to say, I don't really know. And I think it's up to you guys. But what I will say is that BC had a very similar situation 10, 15 years ago. We had the liberal BC Liberals. Now, what you have to know about the BC Liberals is that they're actually the Conservatives. They're not affiliated with the actual Liberal Party. They were conservative. And we had them
Yep.
for a long time, for like 20 years, and there was cuts and all kinds of awful stuff. But we kept voting and we kept fighting back. But now the NDP is in charge with the Greens.
Yep.
Last election we had in BC, we had one riding. We had a lot of close races, but one riding, the difference was 21 votes.
Wow.
Just 21 votes. So
I remember I was paying
oh,
attention to that closely.
Well, there you
Absolutely.
go.
It was a close one.
That's
yep,
an advertisement for this election in Ontario, right?
yep,
Pretty much,
yep.
yeah.
So I just want to encourage you guys. I know, like, this is what conservatives do these days because they're all sort of trying to use the states to take over, and they're pro-business. They're all kind of like misleading you. They're all making fake promises and using populism. And you just got to break out of that and break out of the pessimism that they bring, because of course they'll ruin things and then tell you this is why you should just be hopeless. But you got to just. I mean, I would try to just give you the best energy I could to get out there, vote. Definitely vote early. Just get then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to be anxiously waiting on election night for everything, So go out and vote. It can make a difference, and I believe you guys that you can make a difference in your province.
Oh, I hope so.
I
hope
believe
you're
it.
right. I think, like I said, and I don't want to hijack this, I'm going to leave too, but I think in the best possible way, whatever is happening in the States, I think that for Ontario, people are seeing, like, you can't believe what people are promising you in an election. We've had experience. We need to utilize our vote. It is important to use our vote. And people, I think that's been a good catalyst for people in Ontario. I think they're sitting up and going, "Hey, wait a minute! Look what happened to the states! Like they just blindly believed this guy, and now look at it's chaos ensuing." And I believed it. So we have to cast our vote for something better. I think something different.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly, and then afterwards, Treaty, you're definitely going to give you the floor. But just quickly, guys, for myself, I'll admit at this point, I'm a little divided in terms of what I'm going to do for a vote because, full transparency, I normally vote NDP just because their platform always aligns more with kind of my political stance and just my overall worldview stance. But again, I think the Green Party is really having a really good turnout and a really good platform. The messaging is solid. Everything's there. So in terms of platform and presenting themselves, the Green Party hands down has the win. And that's where I'm divided because I think the Green deserves my vote. But at the same time, again, going to smartvoting.ca, the best chance to keep the Conservatives from getting this seat in my riding would be to vote NDP at this point,
Yeah.
right? So I'd never tell people how to vote. Just get out and vote, regardless of what you vote. As long as you go out and vote, our system works better for everyone.
And like I said, and I'll leave it on this, I think you're absolutely, I agree with you 100%. I think even more time would have done the Green Party a great justice, like if it had been March 27th. But unfortunately, right now, it's just about not having, even if, like, it'd be great if he didn't win, but at least we can hope that he doesn't have a majority. We have to aim for that. That has to be like for sure a definite outcome of this election.
Absolutely.
It
No, I
has to
agree with
be.
that
He
fully.
doesn't have a majority. Like if we can turn to because things won't then the minority he'll have to run everything by the opposition and the leader of the opposition. He really had the upper hand and he won't be able to slide things through so easily. So it may not be the best for Ontario, but the thing is, he won't be going here and there and saying building a tunnel and all this kind of stuff that he's just running rampant with. I thank you so much for allowing me to have a voice. I am passionate about this election. There's a lot of topics. I am in education. I don't know if you heard that before.
Yep.
Yep. So I am passionate about it. I'll actually tell you where I work. I work in international student admissions. So people who come, but they're in high school and
Okay.
coming from abroad. So
Okay.
they're coming to study in Toronto. And so I have lots of IRCC experience. I know a lot of rules. I know a lot of things about study permits, work visas, refugee claimants. I see everything like that in my job. But I am passionate about kids and definitely there's Doug Ford likes to jam them all in there and do less with more people in the classroom. And I know that's not just what it's about. Thank you so
No,
much.
absolutely.
Have a wonderful night and vote, vote, vote.
There you go. Thank you for coming up and sharing your point of view and
Oh,
opinion.
thank you.
I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I never know how to actually exit out of this thing. I think I got it.
Yeah, you should be able. There you go. Treaty Bird, did you want to chime in? You've been waiting a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, the moose. I just wanted to say, great show, so much good information. Thank you for all of that. And I wanted to just note too, like there's 133 First Nations in Ontario,
Yep.
and traditionally we don't participate in elections as much as we maybe should, would be in our better interest. So I would like to offer, if you are interested on Monday, do you want to co-host with me and we can talk about the Ontario election and try to get as many Indigenous people to join from Ontario. So maybe we can help motivate them on Monday to get out and vote and participate and help them understand what's at risk. You know, what are some of the benefits that might come from each party or whatever.
Hmm.
But I don't know the parties and the platforms well enough. So
Okay.
if you're interested, let me know. I'd like to offer that time to share with you to help get some folks out to participate and you know stand together all in Ontario there. That'd be awesome to see.
Yeah, I'd be down to absolutely join you on Monday and try and do my best to
Okay, and
bolster that. Absolutely.
okay, I'll make a promo video earlier than later so we can start sharing it out to like because you have the Ontario connections and I have a
Mhm.
couple only, so I'll do my best. But okay, awesome, good show.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much. And sometimes I kind of zoned out because I was watching the comments too. So great discussion, so much good information. Thanks so much.
Yeah, not a problem. Damien, did you have anything to say before I wrap things up here tonight?
I guess I would say that if you're going out there trying to convince people to vote or to vote a better way, I would focus on the people who aren't voting over the people who are going to vote against what for Ford. Focus on the ones who feel discouraged and lost and pessimistic, and let's try to make some connections. Let's try. I think we've been. I know I've been isolated a bit too much for a while, so let's try
Hmm.
to reach out and bridge some connections and show people it's not just about who's going to win or whatever. It's also about solidarity and helping each other and that kind of thing. So
No, absolutely, and I'll even bolster that with you, where a lot of times, guys, and I'll use this in terms of the stereotypical left, quote unquote, versus right, right? Because the fact is, in a lot of cases, whether you're progressive or whether you're more far right, we all want the same things. It's a matter of how we get there. We can agree on some stuff, but we can't agree on the policy to be able to fix things. So whether it's across party lines, whether it's standing beside our Indigenous brothers and sisters while they go through the struggles and issues that they do and face, that a lot of us might not. You know, we have to stand with one another regardless what the issue is, and stand as a growing number of progressives and leftists that are sick and tired of the way the system is set up and continues to push people down when it should be bolstering, making things easier and better for us, while we continue to get the scraps from regardless of what level of government it is. We're left to fend for ourselves and argue with each other, and that's where we need, again, bringing back to, we need to bolster, we need to come together and organize, which is the strongest message I can say is out there right now for the left as a whole and as a community, to finally just stop doing the infighting, stop, you know, arguing over little details or little things we might disagree on, and let's start bolstering the stuff that we fully agree on and can move forward with, as long as our voices come together as one. That is the biggest key right now. As we see the right wing get a bigger hold, the conservatives get a bigger hold across Canada and the globe, right? I've said it in other shows where it's not just something Canada's facing. The whole world is facing a right wing push in politics. We saw it in Paris and the EU, right? And how the left, quote unquote, was able to actually create a actual coalition in that case to be able to stop the more far right way of things of taking over. So there's balance in that sense, and there's checks and balances, and that's what we need to start seeing here. Bare minimum, have a proper opposition party. Make it so conservatives don't have the majority, so they can face more accountability and not have so much free reign just to mess with our public sectors and make things worse on us. Um, yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a rant, guys. So
Great
just to
point.
wrap,
Great points.
thank you. Just to wrap things up, I really appreciate everyone that came up and contributed their voice and opinions and point of views. I love it. This is what we're here for, to have the conversations and get to the nitty gritty. So I appreciate it. I apologize, guys. Apparently, the Ontario election took up enough time that I couldn't get to the federal Liberal race. So I do apologize for that. Maybe next time, next week, I can try and cover a bit more of the federal stuff and another topic as well. So stay tuned for next week with the Mossy Side with the Moose, where we'll be covering more of the federal aspect of things, and I'll find another topic as well. And before we go, guys, you heard it here. I'm going to be joining Treaty Bird on Monday to cover the politics and make sure that the Indigenous brothers and sisters realize what they're facing and what the stakes are for really everybody, including them at this point, and trying to get them out. They let their voices be heard and just bolster everything combined and hopefully see an end to the conservative majority. So I look forward to that. So Treebird, we will chat soon, guaranteed. Um, Thank you again for coming up, the misses. Really appreciate it. All the guests. Guys, tomorrow the missus is on the navigation station at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget to go join over there. It's a fantastic show. You're going to love it. Um, I got nothing but praise for it. So, yeah. So stay tuned, guys. We do have more. Like I said, we do have more shows starting up. We will be having a 7 day lineup very soon, if not this week, if I'm not mistaken. So Sunday will be another show, I believe, with Happy as well now. So stay tuned for that, guys. And yeah, we're here all week, so stop in when you can. And till next time, stay safe, stay sane, and take care of your loved ones. And I'll see you next time, guys. Thank you so much for all the love and your time. Have a good rest of your week.